And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Knicks Cast channel. This is Luca here, your host, and joining me today, not only a good podcast buddy of mine, but a very good friend of mine. We have Brian from the Brian Mansell Show. As you can see, he's got his Bucks gear on. We're going to be talking Giannis. I know it's not going to be popular because the Knicks just won the NBA Cup. Everybody's in love with the team right now. But Brian, when I recorded my video with Dylan, and I have that posted, guys, please check that out about the Knicks Giannis situation. I was like, Dylan, be a great idea if I could get my buddy Brian on because he is a Milwaukee Bucks fan. He's been a fan since the early 2010s, before Giannis, all these different things, loves Giannis. And I'm curious to get his thoughts on the situation because earlier in the season when the Knicks lost to the Bucks, you were basically high praise for the team, Ryan Reynolds, everything else. Things were going good. And things are not going good, going so good right now because Giannis is hurt. Some of the role players are failing, and the Bucks are just kind of stuck in neutral. But first of all, Brian, first thoughts and where they could find you.
All right. So first off, thank you for having me. It's always a privilege when I get to be on your show and also on other shows just like this. I really appreciate it. You know, we go back pretty far, so I appreciate it. You guys can find me on X at BA Mansell, Instagram at BA Mansell _, and on YouTube, on TikTok, and on Twitch at the Brian Mansell Show. We do a lot of football content, a lot of breakdown content. You guys can tune out into that there. Mostly football based channel, but we'll see where we get down the line. We might diverge a little bit, but as of right now, we are a football channel. But this is not the focus today is not football. You guys are here for basketball. So let's talk some basketball. All right. With Milwaukee, my first thoughts. I came into this season, I always hear a lot of chirping. There's always a lot of people being like, oh, here comes Giannis, here comes Giannis. This has been a theme for about 3 years. The last 3 years has been a theme of saying Giannis is growing impatient with the Bucks. He doesn't want to play for them anymore. He's debating a trade. He may not want to be in Milwaukee anymore. I've heard it all. We've all heard it as a collective, as NBA fans for years. And now is the first time when there's legitimacy behind what is being said. And it's because of guys like Brian Windhorst, guys like Shams Charania, who really inflated that news to this point, and now it's kind of affected, I think, the Bucks' performance. And I think the worst thing they kind of did that really derailed everything that put them in this situation is getting Damian Lillard in the first place. Now, that's not to knock Damian Lillard and say he's a bad basketball player. I think he's, again, great. He's probably going to end up being a Hall of Famer here. The reason why it was bad is because it destroyed the team chemistry that was there. It was very well known that Drew Holiday and Giannis had a great relationship. And even though they said that Giannis approved the trade, he was not happy. He was not thrilled about it. And I mean, once you start destroying the things that keep your star happy, how do you expect to keep him happy? So he's gone. The team hasn't performed because unfortunately Dame was hurt many times. And they really didn't see a lot of games on the court together as a result in the last 2 years. And let's cue to the end of last season, and we get to the trade deadline. All of a sudden, Chris Middleton's out the door. Chris Middleton's been there since the start for Giannis. Chris Middleton was his guy. They grew up together. He grew up in the league with Chris by his side. And to lose your brother to DC and get back Kyle Kuzma, whose impact has not been there, to justify, having some kind of respect there. It's unfortunate. Kuzma was great with the Wizards, but I don't know what's going on with this offense in Milwaukee, but it's not working out. And now he's hurt as well. He's day to day. It's just not working out as an experiment. And they did invest in him this offseason to keep him as a bench guy. But with Giannis out, he has to play. And I think another thing that's really affected it is the coaching changes. Giannis understood the firing of Mike Budenholzer. That's really also, I think, what really kicked things off. Because Budenholzer was going through a hard time. He wasn't in the headspace to coach for the playoffs. He coached anyway. His team got embarrassed, and then he was dismissed by the team, mainly because he needed to get his stuff together and really get his head back into basketball because he needed to grieve his loss in the family. I think it was his brother who passed away, and very tragically. And when they did that, they had a lot of opportunities to grab some great coaches in that hiring cycle. And one of those guys that I was heavily advocating for is the guy who's currently running one of the top 3 teams in the East right now and did it last year too. Former coach of the Brooklyn Nets, Kenny Atkinson. I thought Atkinson would be a perfect fit for Milwaukee. I thought Atkinson would be the guy. I would have been fine with Nick Nurse as well. And instead, Milwaukee went with Adrian Griffin. Not to say Griffin's bad, because I think Griffin actually was very good. When he was fired, Milwaukee was still a top 4 team in the East. They had a very good record. Since they've had Doc, their win percentage has been worse with Doc than it was with Adrian Griffin. I know that sounds crazy to say, but it's been worse with Doc than it was with Griffin. The idea of firing him because Giannis didn't like him or there was tension in the room and didn't respect him, that's self-destructive. But the point is, it's about keeping your star happy. And the team that's on the court right now, I didn't have any hopes for it, because that's what we're really talking about here. I had hopes for this team going into this year, a little bit, because I thought they made some good investments. I didn't know who Ryan Rollins is entering this year. I knew he was on the team. He wasn't very impactful from the start. I think he had an appearance in one game against Indiana last year in the playoffs, and that was kind of it. And I mean, the team's kind of reshaped itself. But what I don't like is it's really just kind of the way the team has behaved without Giannis. With Giannis on the court, the team's 9-8. They have a winning record. They are good and they can be competitive. It's very obvious. But without Giannis on the court, you see this team has no level of impact whatsoever, which tells you that the role and support is not there. Even when Giannis was starting out, there was still some kind of a support young in his career. I mean, listen, is Bledsoe great support? No. Is Brogdon amazing support? No. But combine that with guys like John Henson and Greg Monroe, you might have something there. When you had Ersan Ilyasova, Teletovic, Mirotic, they had a lot of options around of good shooters, guys who could get the rock around, everything, and they could make it work. And they knew that Giannis was the main scorer and facilitator. That would be how it is. He was the main scorer. And now he is the main scorer, but there's not enough support there to help him if he's in situations where it's like, all right, I can't get a shot off. I need you guys to take it. And guys like Green will hit a 3 for you. Not a problem. Guys like Rollins will hit a 3 for you. Not a problem. Now Bobby Portis can hit a 3. Not a problem, because he's hitting almost 48% this year in 22 minutes. So that's great. But guys like Kuzma, guys like Turner's having a better year from 3, but they don't use him like that. And because of it, it takes a toll. So, I mean, really, when they had this different core of Lopez and Middleton, and they had before Dame, they had Drew, and then it was Giannis. Those 4 together were very hard to stop. And it made them super effective and kept them in games for a very long time because Drew was balanced on both ends. I haven't seen anybody on this team in the guard position that's been balanced on both ends. Green plays some pretty solid defense, but from the point guard spot, Rollins is a good challenger. I don't really see it from KPJ. I don't really see it from Porter Jr. You look at guys like Middleton. Middleton was the sharpshooter for a small forward, and their small forward is Gary Trent, who's not even averaging 10 points. And he is getting some decent minutes a game, and he's not even contributing to double digits. And then you take a look into the center spot. Brook Lopez, before he was dealt out before he left this offseason, he could swing both ways. He converted his play style from being a big who can only work inside in the paint and being a rim protector guy. He converted himself into being a stretch that can also be a shooter from the wings. Like he was very good at that. And right now, Turner's not that guy. Turner's defense, I think, is good right now. The offense, they're just not using him correctly. And I can see that he's got some more diversity in his game where he can be an impactful scorer, but Doc just chooses not to use him as so. So right now, they started out really hot. I was talking hot because I was really stressed out because I just was tired of hearing the Giannis rumors. I'm like, stop talking about Giannis if the team's playing good like this. And then we proceeded to go we're now 11-17 at this point. So we're kind of towards the bottom of the East now. Not good. So really, we learned really quickly. Without Giannis, this team's fried.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, You go back to 2021 was the obviously peak of Giannis. Although he didn't win the MVP, wins the finals, and the 2 years prior he wins MVP with Brook Lopez. You mentioned it as a center. You just mentioned that Miles Turner is not nearly having the same impact as Brook Lopez, although they play very similarly because Turner has a defensive presence. He's also a stretch big, but he's also not as shooting. I think I looked it up, not shooting as much 3-point attempts, although he's been very efficient this year. So it's like a mixture of many things from my vantage point, from an outsider's perspective. But for me, looking at Giannis, I'll get your perspective on when do you think they will get to trade him, but I'll talk about the Knicks situation. We'll see how this dives in real
Okay.
quick. And for the Knicks right now, they're playing some pretty awesome basketball. They just lost to the 76ers, which was unfortunate, but they won the NBA Cup. Everybody's happy, everybody's elated. But everybody's looking at the question of Towns versus Giannis. And I think anybody would be stupid to say that Towns is an upgrade over Giannis. I think it's silly to
Absolutely.
suggest that Towns is a better player than Giannis. Giannis is a top 3 player in the sport. If he comes to New York, and he wins a championship, he's easily the franchise's most talented player that has ever stepped at Madison Square Garden. That beats Walt Frazier, that beats Patrick Ewing, that beats Carmelo Anthony. You could go on and on down the list. The problem, there's multiple issues, or I should say, conundrums, whatever you want to say, with a potential Giannis trade. Number one, the Knicks do not have a lot of assets. They don't have a lot of young players who can say, okay, this person's on a minimum contract. This guy could be filler. Let's ship him out. Like Tyler Kolek's playing pretty well right now. He didn't play well last night, regardless. Kolek is the only
Yes.
guy besides Deuce McBride who this franchise on this current roster has developed, because for a lot of the years, you could count 2022, 2023, hell, even 2024, their first round pick, Macomb Dadier, is barely seeing the floor. So the Knicks lack a lot of young talent as opposed to years ago when they used their chips like Emmanuel Quickly to trade for OG Anunoby. You had RJ Barrett obviously trade for OG Anunoby. Quentin Grimes being traded for Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. So number one, they lack young players, and that's what the Bucks are going to want. If the Bucks are going to trade Giannis, they're going to want young players. Here's number two: they're going to want draft assets.
Big time.
Absolutely. The Knicks would at least need a 3-team trade to work this out, because the Knicks, as I mentioned, have passed on multiple drafts. Number one. Number two, they traded 5 picks for Mikal Bridges. I don't regret that right now. Last year, I was different. I was like, Mikal Bridges is not playing well. He was not worth the 5 first-round picks. He might not even be worth the extension. I think he's played very well this season. I think you could possibly put him in conversation for most improved player of the year. Regardless, whatever. The Knicks also traded a first-round pick for Karl Anthony Towns. So that's the thing. So the Bucks are going to want draft assets because they want to rebuild their team. Now, I think it was either Chris Haynes or somebody else put it out there that if Giannis goes, possibly Miles Turner and Kyle Kuzma can go after him.
Yeah, they might blow it up. Yeah, that's
been talked. It wouldn't surprise me, although Miles Turner obviously has recently just signed. But also another thing, I just talked about how not Karl Anthony Towns, Giannis played his best minutes with a backup, I should say, a stretch 5 behind him at center that shoots the 3 ball. Giannis really doesn't play center, and he really doesn't want to. He needs shooters all around him. He's not a great 3-point threat whatsoever. He's
been better this year though. If you look at his numbers, he's actually is having a better year. I will say that too.
absolutely.
Like, I'm not going to completely dismiss Giannis as a terrible shooter. I am going to admit when he's playing great, and he is doing very well. When he's on the court again, 29 points per game. And if you want to talk about 3-point percentage, listen, his last 10, he wasn't very good. He was shooting 20, but throughout the regular season, the games he's played, he was shooting 43.5. So he was shooting for threes, and when he was taking them, they were going through for the most part.
It also depends on how many attempts he's taking per game, but primarily the defense will look at Giannis as he's explosive, he's going to drive to the paint, he's going to collapse the defense, he's going to kick the shooters. 2020-21, that was the perfect build around Giannis. You had Bobby Portis off the bench. You had Brook Lopez at center. You had Chris Middleton at the 2 or the 3. You had Drew Holiday. And you also, P.J. Tucker was a key guy for the Bucks in the championship.
Huge. He was huge for the defensive side of the ball. We needed it, and he was able to provide that to be a type of enforcer we needed.
Absolutely. So when I talk about shooters, and the thing is, I just mentioned Miles Turner, Brook Lopez, Karl Anthony Towns would be a good fit next to Giannis. Here's the issue, though. The Knicks cap space, and flexibility money wise would go from this to this because Karl Anthony Towns is making 53, $54 million a year. Giannis is making around the same. So you'd be really limiting your cap space. And the issue is with a possible Giannis trade, I'm going to compare it to you, Brian. You don't want to put Giannis in the same situation that he is in Milwaukee, where there's not a lot of great role players, there's not a lot of depth, and where the onus is on you. And people have, I'm not going to say like a lot of people have suggested this, like, so one of my buddies from the Hot Hand Theory, who I like, and I've had on this show, we did a live show. Although I do disagree with him,
Yeah,
he thinks that, and he's not somebody who wants Giannis, which is interesting. Um, he said that he would trade Jalen Brunson for Giannis, and I completely disagree with that notion.
I disagree as well. I don't listen. I like Brunson. I like Brunson. I want that very known. I'm actually very happy to see the Knicks play well because to me, they're not a rival to me. They're not a major concern to me because I'm just more concerned right now about getting out of our own way. So that's one thing. I've never had a problem with the Knicks ever. In fact, one of my greatest highlights ever is watching, I think it was Tim Hardaway Jr. get dunked on by Giannis,
Yes,
completely lit up. I mean, that's still my favorite highlight of all time. But I never had a problem with the Knicks. But when it comes to Brunson, I understand it's because it's a superstar for a superstar. Yeah, but realistically, the Knicks would never move Brunson because it's already hard enough to get a guard as it is that's so effective. But on top of that, he literally is the star of the team. There are people who have debated already that he's the king of New York of sports. Why would you trade him at that point? Like that's stupid. It's a franchise motivator, a guy who's good for the locker room and a guy who's great on the court. It's very hard to find guys like that. Giannis is like that. Yes, he has been like that for a long time for us. But Brunson's right now that for the Knicks. I don't see Cat at that level of same input. That's why he gets put in these trade rumors. Do I want Karl Anthony Towns? Not really. Am I being honest? Not really. If we're talking 5 years ago, Timberwolves Cat, yeah, I would absolutely take him. But that would be a lot harder to achieve because he was more of a star then. Now he's more of a second fiddle guy. And if he's on a team where he can maybe become the number one again, he wouldn't even be able to be our 5. He'd be our number 4 because it'd have to be Miles Turner staying at the 5. So it makes things more difficult. The only way that I think a real trade gets done between Milwaukee and New York that justifies that level is if you could somehow put a mega package together and we would somehow ship you not only Giannis, but probably if we're going to blow it up, we might as well give you Miles Turner too. So we would give you a very good defensive big who has scoring capability and another guy who's top 3 in the NBA almost every year.
yeah. And the whole thing with, and I understood his logic as an XJ from Hot Hand Theory. Check him out, please. His link's in the description. But he was like, and this was also, it was XJ, it was also Jeff Rasmussen, who I also had on my show. They were basically saying, and they were comparing Brunson Giannis to Damon Giannis. And the whole thing with Brunson and
Mm,
Giannis, I should say the Damon Giannis thing was both are very on ball dominant players. Giannis is not your typical big man where he's just going to roll to the basket or be some sort of stretch 5. The thing with Giannis is he's a wing creator. He's going to drive to the paint. He's going to kick out to the corners, kick out to the wings for open threes for shooters because he has so much gravity as a player, top 3 player in the sport. Brunson is a primarily on ball. He's not a pass first guy who's going to be like, I don't want to say submissive, but like that kind of player. Brunson is heavy on ball. And yes, there's been questions whether he and Karl Anthony Towns can play together as Brunson Towns. They've played better this season. I think they've ran more pick and rolls this season. I'm not totally sure, but they've ran Towns as a hub where they could get Brunson off the ball. Brunson drives to the paint. He might collapse the defense or he might get an open shot at the basket. So those things involved. Jeff mentioned specifically, he's like, the problem with the Brunson Giannis thing is like, just like Damon Giannis, put aside the injuries. Are you going to see the best version of Giannis and Brunson at the same time on the same court? That's the big question. We don't know. It's a simply hypothetical. And they also believe that Towns hasn't been fully maximized yet, Karl Anthony Towns. Now, I can understand that. We should be playing more lineups with 5 out shooters, or I should say more shooters around Karl Anthony Towns. But also as well, Karl Anthony Towns is a flawed player. Now people will point to his impact and say, oh, look at his estimated box plus minus, where he's ranked 93rd percentile. That's actually a lot of impact or a lot of reliability on his defensive rebounding. He's a great defensive rebounder. He's an awful defender, and that he gets chewed up in the pick and roll way too often. He's got rocky feet. He doesn't move smoothly, and I don't think his basketball IQ is great just in terms of the defense. But the offense, people point to and say, hey, he's not having his biggest shooting season. And this is all analytically, of course. He's not having his greatest shooting season. He's bound to bounce back, number one. Number two, he's top 10 in, or at least in the 90th percentile and above in terms of offensive impact per the EPM stats. So those are things to consider with Karl Anthony Towns. My problem with Karl Anthony Towns is I like Towns, and I think there's some misjudgments around Karl Anthony Towns sometimes, not all the time. I think criticism is due when it's warranted, but he will always be compared to Julius Randle because that's who they were traded for. Randle was traded for Towns. Towns was traded for Randle, so on and so forth, where people compare Randle, say, oh, he was more tough, this, that, and the third. I'm not going to get into the whole conversation. I think it's a lot of revisionist stuff because Randle had his own issues too. He couldn't play in the playoffs. I thought Towns had a better playoffs last year than Randle did in any season with the Knicks. That's my personal opinion. He was up and down some games, Karl Anthony Towns, but he made a big impact. Game 3 of the conference finals versus the Pacers. He had a big impact in Game 6 versus the Celtics. Also, Game 4 against the Detroit Pistons. He pretty much put the team on his back and led that comeback. So I believe Towns is a positive offensive player. And I do believe that, his defense is his worst aspect, and you have to maximize all of his offense to get the most out of him. But right now, let's go with the facts. He's not shooting well from the perimeter. Could he be playing with an injury? Sure, but let's go to the Derek Jeter comment or the quote, if you're playing, you're not injured. So that's my personal opinion. We can only judge you by what you do on the court. But my problems with Towns is the low IQ, the bad defense, and the bad fouls at times. Imagine you're in a shootout, right, in the playoffs. Like it's, 85-81. It's a shootout. You're winning, but you need Towns for the offensive impact. And he is like 4 fouls, and he picks up another foul. What do you do then? You're going to have to take him off the court. So he's not the smartest basketball player. Giannis is a smarter basketball player. Giannis can pass. Giannis can create. So as much as I do understand the hesitation around trading around Giannis in terms of play style, because you have 2 alpha dogs in Brunson and Giannis, I think it needs to get done at some point. My personal opinion. Now, what comes into that package, you're not – and let me just say this. I'm going to ask you from a Bucks perspective. You're not just going to trade for Karl Anthony Towns and filler, right? Like you would want more assets.
We would want more than that. So essentially, like if we're gonna get Karl Anthony Towns, we're gonna need some kind of small forward who can be super impactful. So maybe, who knows, a package could include Josh Hart in it. We may be sitting here saying we want Josh Hart, Cat, some picks, and maybe a couple young guys as well. Maybe, you guys are pretty quick to be like, oh well, you guys could take Mitch, and I'm just like, what does that do? We have Jericho Sims. Like, why do we need the same guy? Although I do know that Mitch can be big like that.
Absolutely. And the thing is with that, a lot of people are saying, okay, do you want to trade OG Anunoby? Do you want to trade Mikal Bridges? As we just mentioned, we just talked about it, that the Bucks are not going to want just Karl Anthony Towns and filler. That's silly. It's silly. It's fallacious, whatever you want to say. So people have like, okay, you're going to have to trade another player of impact because the Bucks obviously would want to start over. So people have said, okay, do we trade, as you mentioned, Josh Hart? Do you want to trade for OG Anunoby, who is having an all-defensive year? Guaranteed, it's a pretty hefty contract because I think he's earning $212 million over the course of 5 years. You're talking about $40 million plus. He's like, I would put him in the category of like a Derek White. He's like that fringe all-star, but he's not quite there. He's like a very high quality role player. And in my opinion, I think he's the second most important player on the Knicks as a whole. That even beats Karl Anthony Towns because when OG is off the court, it's just horrible for the defense. Like, let me pull up the numbers right here for the New York Knicks. OG Anunoby, just let's go off this season, right? OG Anunoby on the court with the Knicks. The Knicks have a plus 14.68 net rating. Off the court, the Knicks have a plus 2 net rating. And the record when OG plays versus not plays is not even comparable. So that's a decision that the Knicks have to come up with. Because once again, I'm going to reiterate the point: the Bucks are not just going to take scraps. They're going to want draft picks. They're going to want young players. They're going to want 1 to 2 players of impact. So, and also the Knicks are not going to trade Mitchell Robinson to the Bucks because you said you have Miles Turner, you have Jericho Sims. So that's not going to work. Also, Mitchell Robinson is due for a contract extension. So I don't think the Bucks are going to be
Right.
like, okay, let's extend another center. That would be
Yeah, no. If we lose Giannis, I want to make it very clear. If we lose Giannis, the chances of a rebuild at that point are about 80%. It's going to be a very high probability that we rebuild, and that means we're going to sell off a lot of assets, a lot of star assets, which means we just got Turner. Turner will be turned around the door and out, and somebody's got to take that big contract he's got. That's one. Two, Kuzma out the door. Three, you're looking through the team. Porter Jr. might be the only guy that stays with AJ Green. They may keep the guard group, but everybody else is an asset, including Gary Trent Jr. as well, and Bobby Portis. So if Giannis is out the door, then that's that. But that's again a huge if. Like I know that we're at this point, and this is the part of the conversation we really need to
yes.
have. There's, like I said in the beginning, there's been a lot of speculation. There's been a lot of talk. There's been a lot said. There's been a lot of disagreements. I've even heard the worst take in the world from Kendrick Perkins himself saying that Giannis is a coward because Giannis won't come forward and say what he thinks and tell the team, I want to trade. I want nothing to do with you. He's calling him a coward for not coming out for it. And thankfully, Richard Jefferson called him out on his lunacy. But here's what I'm understanding. I don't like the mystery nature of how they're treating this whole situation. I can safely admit that. But I will say, Giannis, this is a very hard situation for Giannis. This is a team who took a chance on him that nobody else would have believed in and would have got rid of in the first 2 years. Like if you look at the first couple of years of Giannis's playing time and what he did in his first 2 seasons, I don't think many teams would have kept a player like that. He was not very good. He was a very good shooter, but he was not somebody you would turn and be like, yeah, I want him I'm going to keep him forever. He's going to be my star moving forward. Like the first season, okay, let's go with the first season. His first season in Milwaukee, he was averaging 24 and a half minutes a game, and he was averaging 6 points, just under 7, actually. Following year, he's at 12, almost 13. And then 15, 16, he reaches 17. So those first 2 seasons you see of him, and that was with Jason Kidd coaching the team. Yeah, I don't want to relive that, but yeah, Jason Kidd was coaching. You see numbers like that, and you're saying to yourself, why would I invest in a guy like that? But Milwaukee took the chance, and they stuck with him. And from there, he got better and better every year. After those first 3 seasons of growth, he was an all-star. 2016, 2017. He was the most improved player. He was top 10 in MVP voting. He was all NBA second, all defense second. And then from there on, he has not missed an all-star appearance since. He has been an all-star every year. He's won 2 MVPs, a DPOY. He has been all NBA first. Literally, this is true, by the way. I'm about to tell you this. Mm-hmm. He's been all NBA first for 7 consecutive seasons. 7 straight seasons on the all NBA first team. This isn't just some random guy who's very good that you would be trading for. This is a guy who has been a top 5 player in basketball every year. A guy who's been snubbed of the MVP a couple of times too. If I realistically was have the conversation, I would tell you this guy should be getting about 4 MVPs. He should have 4 MVPs at this point. He's had some monster seasons that get completely overlooked by guys like Jokic and when Harden was having his prime in Houston. But regardless of that fact of MVPs or not, point is, Milwaukee is his home. They took the chance on him. They believed in him when no one else did. He gave everything to the city, to a city that gave so much back to him. The hardest part about this for Giannis is it's parting ways with the only people who ever believed in him when he first came to the U.S. And that's the hard part. And so he needs to do the most respectful thing and keep this as quiet as possible. And honestly, if you want to talk about real trade destinations, you may find this interesting. I don't want to trade with the Knicks. I don't want to trade with New York. Not because you got bad talent, but because I think there's better options out there.
Mhm.
The Spurs are already talking about, we're good. We're good. But that would have been the place I would have looked at, obviously. I love the idea of San Antonio. There's now discussions, and I know this is crazy to say because the Thunder only have 3 losses on the year.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already talking about we need to make some adjustments to these starters in the rotation because clearly we got a couple flaws we need to work on. And I'm sitting here like, you have 3 losses. What are you talking about? And
You
they're
just you
and the
just came
fans
off
are
a championship.
yeah, and the fans are talking about we need to make some changes. You've lost 3 games on the year. You're 25-3. What's going on here? But they're saying that if there was one team who would have the capital to do so, to make a trade like Giannis happen, it would be OKC. And as much as it would pay me to do that, I would make that trade. Give me a couple of your young starters who have been star contributors on your team and give me those draft picks. Because Milwaukee's draft capital over the next 5 years is god awful. It is terrible. They need draft assets like crazy. They only have a first round pick every other year, and then they find a way to somehow trade that. And they don't invest in their young guys. They don't do it like they used to. Giannis was the only young guy they really invested in that worked out. That was it. Brogdon was pretty good, but they quit on him too early because they liked Bledsoe better, which I still think was the stupidest thing they ever did. But if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have got Drew. So either way, there's so many things I can go into. But OKC I've liked. I like the idea of the Spurs. I'm really interested in the Warriors package that they could come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Really interested in that. I don't want Draymond, but if that's got to get it done, that's got to get it done. And I mean, there really hasn't been any other team that's wowed me. You guys have what you guys could provide would be great, but I don't think it matches what those other 3 may be able to put together. And I mean, think about it. At the end of the day, we would need consistent guards. I mean, listen, as good as the point guards are, we would need a decent shooting guard to go with AJ Green. We need a 1-2 punch. We don't have that. Look at this forward group. We're going to need new forwards, and we're going to need a backup center. Well, no, we don't really need a center, but right now, small forward, power forward, that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
So we would really need to upgrade the forward spot. So if you got plenty of forwards to spare, that's great. And then we would just need like at least 3 firsts. So if we're doing draft capital, 3 firsts are definitely involved here at minimum. And then you would need 2 guys that are starters that are forwards. And then on top of that, maybe a role player. So 2 starters, a role player, and then 3 draft picks. That's realistically, I'm not even kidding. That is what will get a deal done. 2 starters, a role player, and 3 first round picks at minimum to at least get the conversation close.
Yeah, I'm going to give my feedback on that. And you said 2 starters and a role player. That's easy, I can think about. And the thing with the Knicks situation is they're close to the second apron, so they have to send out more money than they take in. Giannis, as I said, is $54 million, so you would have to trade
Cat would definitely be there.
Karl Anthony Towns, possibly OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges, one of the 2.
Probably
Bridges, starter, who just recently got extended and would be eligible for trade. Obviously, we'll talk about when they will trade Giannis in a bit. And role player, maybe Josh Hart, maybe somebody off the bench, possibly.
I like the idea of just taking those 3. If I took Bridges, Towns, and Hart, I would be okay with that. Because they've all been good this year for the most part with New York, from what I understand.
For sure.
They've all been pretty good. And if they can turn them around, I mean, I'm thinking of a team right now. I'm dreaming of a team led by Kevin Porter Jr. / Ryan Rollins, AJ Green, with Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and Karl Anthony Towns with Miles Turner. I really think that's a solid team. And then that's already solid enough to maybe get you into the play-in race here or into maybe a 7 seed potentially or 6 potentially. But at least the most important thing is the draft capital. If there's not enough draft assets, you're just grabbing veterans after veterans to appease something that's eventually going to be a major issue down the line. Look at OKC. OKC took years being terrible because they wanted to build up their young group. And they did. They accepted as much draft capital as possible. They got rid of the vets. They invested in the youth big time, exploited an NBA loophole with the draft pick compensation and used it to their advantage. And now look at their team. they may have the number one pick this year, and they may win another championship and have the number one pick. Do you know how insane that is?
It's crazy to think about.
They've stacked up their capital so well through the years, took so many years of being a terrible team, and have turned it into something amazing. Literally, the veteran leader on the team, it was Caruso and technically SGA. That's their veteran group. And I remember when he was playing for the Clippers, and I saw a lot of promise in him. I didn't see him as being a star, but he became a star last year. He definitely did. And I mean, the way the Thunder have put things together and started really winning after years of not being good, it's really impressive. And it's also a lesson to those teams that constantly want to be in competition every year. Sometimes you got to accept the fact you're not going to be very good, and you just got to try to play your best just in spite of. And I think that's what Milwaukee is going to have to look at soon if they decide to lose Giannis. And then that's why I'm saying they need the draft capital, because that's the only way you're going to get better, is that you have to invest in the draft. That's it.
Absolutely. And the thing with some people, what they say about Giannis is like, oh, well, his play style is not sustainable. You know, he relies heavily on his explosiveness due to decline, this, that, and the third. But here's the thing. The Knicks are competing for a championship right now. So it's 2 to 3. This window is what, 2 to 3 years? I think
Yeah,
Giannis
because eventually it's going to be a decline. Either Brunson's going to regress or somebody else is going to regress. That's his key contributors. You're going to start seeing the points per game go down. They're going to be a little slower on the defensive end, and then that's going to affect everything.
Absolutely. So I think there is a case, obviously, to trade for Giannis, and I think that decline part, yes, obviously Giannis will decline at some point, but right now in this window that the Knicks have, I think he's still one of the top players in the NBA. This, that, and so forth. Now, let me ask you this. Now, this is just an NBA thing. You talked about OKC, you talked about Golden State, you talked about San Antonio. Did you ever think about South Beach, Miami?
I looked into it. I'm not a huge fan. I don't love that idea of sending him to Miami. I've heard that name. I've heard that team be brought up. I'm not buying it. I will say this. If Giannis is moved, I think there's only one time I think it will happen. And it wouldn't be this season.
Mm-hmm.
It would be the offseason.
That's why I was literally about to segue into that.
Everybody talks about timing. They're like trying to say, oh, it's going to happen right before Christmas or right around Christmas. Nah, bro. If it's going to be right around Christmas, something is wrong. Something really bad's happened in New York if it's happening around Christmas. That means he is done. I won't take another minute for this team. And that's unfortunate, but I wouldn't blame him either. I realistically do think he's a man of his word, and he's a very honorable man who will player who will, out of respect for the team, finish the year with them. I think after the year is over, that is when he will be like, okay, it's time. We've run our course. Let's go. And that's what's going to happen, because the way they're trying to talk is he's doing everything to his agent. And if that's the case, don't blame him. But at the same time, I'm sitting here watching him and I'm saying to myself, you got to do what's best for you. That's why I said entering this year. All these rumors were picking up again, and I said he's got to do what's best for him. And that's the one perspective from a Bucks fan you may not hear as often, but it's growing now. It's that Giannis has to do what's best for him and his family. When I heard the news he moved his family to Greece and took him out of the United States, I said that's when I realized this is going to be his last year if they don't win. And this organization is fumbling this opportunity once again. And you're going to see the departure of probably one of the greatest NBA players ever, similar to the departure when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar left and went to the Lakers. Once again, a generational player who is top 50 all time. I think I could say Giannis is going to finish top 50 all time.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
He may even make a case when he's done to be in the top 10. He may do it. But regardless of that fact, Kareem left because I think he was at odds with New York personally. I think that was the reason. And Giannis, it's starting to get to that point too. So it'll be twice now that a legacy generational player leaves after winning a championship because of something that the front office did shortly after winning the championship. Mm-hmm. And I think if you look at their courses, Giannis, the path that I'm seeing right now, And this is going to make you get angry and rage. But his best path to success is going to Boston. I'm kidding. No, not Boston. I would never be okay with that. Giving Boston Giannis would probably send me over the edge and make me quit watching basketball. But if there was a team he would send him to, I would think the Lakers. That is the other thought. Because think about it. This is probably, in my opinion, LeBron's last season. This seems like it's going to be LeBron's last year. They have Luca already there. Milwaukee's going to want a massive deal that involves Luca. I don't see them trading Doncic. They would trade everybody but Doncic to make that happen. So you would
Austin
put Luca
Reeves.
and Giannis on the same team, just spam out the roles, and then the Bucks will have to invest in the draft to get star players that reignite the flame and get the team back to a potential winning course down the line. Right now, the way this is tracking, Giannis is gone at the end of the season. Doc is getting fired at the end of the year, and they're going to probably go on a fire sale to just stack up capital. And they're going to accept the fact that they're going to be bad for a little bit, which is fine. I'm used to it. I mean, I remember when Milwaukee was very bad, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Brandon Jennings, all those guys. But my question is, Brian, is like, I mean, I don't know for sure. I'm going to look it up on the trade machine. But what does the Lakers draft capital look like? Because if they don't have enough draft capital, as I said, Austin Reeves would be probably the headline of that trade. But
100%, he will be coming to Milwaukee. 100%.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Maybe a guy like Jared Vanderbilt or something like that. But I'm going to try to look at their draft capital as the best of my abilities, because from my perspective, I could be wrong. I have been wrong many times before. I don't think they have a lot. I don't think they have that
much either, but in terms of the player talent they have, the pool is a lot stronger than I thought there was. And they all can fit in many different ways, and great coaches can make stuff like that work. So, I mean, I'm just spitballing. I saw the Lakers came up recently, and I'm like, didn't think of that.
Yeah.
And then now there's also the other team, which is the dark horse in all this. You haven't heard them once, but Atlanta.
I'm
And
assuming
the Atlanta deal would involve Trae Young coming to Milwaukee.
I could very well see that. And I'm looking at the Lakers picks. They have a 2026 first, 2028 first, 2030, 2031, 32, so on and so forth. So they don't have a pick for 27. I don't know if they traded one of their first round picks, the 2027 or 2025 for the Luca trade. But if you want to look at the Hawks in terms of picks, they're right now in the middle. They're right now in the play-in seed, regardless. Picks 2026. That's actually a possibly Milwaukee pick, because Atlanta will receive the more favorable of the Milwaukee first-round pick and New Orleans first-round pick, and Milwaukee will receive the less favorable of the two, so you can maybe switch that. So 2026 round one, Milwaukee or New Orleans swap rights. They have another first-round pick, which is San Antonio, Cleveland, Minnesota, or Utah swap rights. 2027 is another swap rights, 2028. So there's a lot more in the picks category, and they have a lot of young players. But let's shift this back to the Knicks. You said that you think that Giannis will get traded in the offseason, which I think I'm starting to agree with. I originally thought the deadline, but if you, of course, said that would only happen if something is like really down bad. But now I'm going to ask you this. You mentioned all these teams, the Lakers, the Spurs, the Hawks, all these different teams. You mentioned you really wouldn't want to trade with the Knicks because there's a lack of package. If Giannis comes to the organization in goodwill, and he's been very sound, as you said,
yes,
and says, I'm officially requesting a trade. My only destination is New York. Do you think the organization does it, and will the organization do it, in your opinion?
It's tough because if we're talking years ago, I would say Milwaukee would be respectable enough to do that. I don't know what this front office is now. It's the same GM,
John Horst.
It's still John Horst, but he lost his touch, man. I can't really justify any of it. If I were to say, I want to be the good person and say that they do listen. And I think the hardest part is I think they are listening. Because keep in mind, he was almost a Knick this offseason.
Yes, he was.
He was almost a Knick. Because he did request it. He requested a trade this offseason to go to the Knicks. and Milwaukee convinced him to stay because they told him to give it another year. And let's see what happens this year, and then if you're still not happy, we'll find you a place to go. We'll grant you your wish. So they convinced him to stay another year, see what happens. If it doesn't work out, he's going to leave. And I feel very bad for him. And I think the office would respect it. I do believe that, because at the end of the day, you got to do your star players right. If you're not anywhere near this kind of state of success that you've had these last 9 years without Giannis. Without Giannis, you wouldn't have been the playoff team you've been. Like, if we go back, right, and I just look back, okay, we said after Jason Kidd's last 2 years, 42 and 40, 44 and 38. After that, it's Budenholzer, 60 and 22, 56-17, 46 and 26 when they won the championship, 51 and 31, 58 and 24. That was the last year of Budenholzer right there. After he left, 49 and 33, 48 and 34, right now 11 and 17. This is the worst win percentage for this team since 2013, 2014 when they first got Giannis. And that they were 15 and 67 that year. They're not going to be anywhere near that level, but they're not going to be good. And you just see the slow downturn of the team. But my point I'm trying to make is they wouldn't be in that position without Giannis. And I'm sure they recognize that and they observe that. He's the greatest player in Milwaukee Bucks franchise history. He's the greatest player the franchise has ever had. I know we say Kareem, Kareem is Kareem, yeah. But he didn't have the years in Milwaukee as Giannis did that would justify making Kareem the greatest player anymore. Now it's Giannis. So when it's a guy who's been the king of your franchise and the leader of your franchise for so many years, you can't sit there and disrespect him by not giving him what he's asking for. He asked for the trade. You got to figure it out. So if he goes up to the team again, and we've come out with a story in a couple of days that says he spoke to the team, he's officially requested a trade, he wants to go to New York Knicks. Who says you? First of all, you don't have to honor that, but it's the right thing to do. And I think knowing what Giannis has done for the franchise, they would respect that.
Absolutely. And what I was also going to add is another thing with the Giannis stuff, and obviously it depends on what you guys get in return, or I should say, what you guys get in return depends on this. Giannis is a free agent in 2 years.
He is.
So you really, and yes, for what it seems like realistically, even Alan Hahn said it on New York Sports Radio, he would likely get traded in the offseason. This is not something that's happening now. But do you risk a slimmer, slightly return in the offseason for something that could be a 1-year rental? That's a big question. And obviously you would have to extend Giannis. That's a non-negotiable. But does any team risk and say, hey, you know what, we're going to trade all these assets for Giannis? Like, I don't want to compare it to like the Juan Soto situation because Giannis is such of a bigger magnitude. But like, do these franchises risk that is the question. And obviously it depends on the cap space, the second apron, all these different things involved. But do they risk it ultimately? Just like, because as Brian, you're absolutely right. The Bucks are not going to be good this year. They're probably going to be at best a play-in team or get knocked out in the first round like they have been the last few seasons. But it's giving yourself false hope. And Brian, I know you don't believe in the false hope, but like it's giving the franchise a little bit of false hope. Like maybe something can be done instead of just scrapping the whole project together. It's scrapping the whole project altogether where, okay, Giannis, you're gone. Kuzma, you're gone. Turner, you're gone. We got to scrap this. We got to get as you said, much assets as possible, whether it's draft picks, young players, or role players who can restart the next phase of this franchise post Giannis.
Yes, they got to blow it up. I'm going to be the first Milwaukee fan to say it. Blow it up. Giannis is not happy, and nothing's going to change until the team, first of all, fires Doc and puts in a coach that Giannis would love. That's one. They had an opportunity to do that. They failed to do that. So that's one. Two, you need to then find a way to get the liability vets who have big contracts out the door. Mm-hmm. Liability vets would include Bobby Portis, who, although he is having a better year now, We don't know how long that'll last. We have known him to be very inconsistent at times off the bench and as a starter. So that's another guy. Same thing with Kuzma, who's a veteran with a big contract that shouldn't really have that contract. You look at the guard group. I mean, I'd personally keep Kevin Porter Jr. and Ryan Rollins unless we get a good trade offer for both. AJ Green stays. Gary Trent, another veteran contract, out the door. And then if it comes to it where we need to get Miles Turner out, yeah, trade him. It's unfortunate, but it's because literally Giannis. There is no little secret agenda. There is no, there's a path here, there's a path there. No. If Giannis is gone, Milwaukee's chances are done. Doesn't matter what the return is. They can still try to fight with the return and try to save the season a little bit. But after the season, it's over. They're gonna make a lot of asset swaps, and it's gonna be bad. Like, if you're a Milwaukee fan, you better be prepared. This could be a 20 or 25 win team next year. This is going to be on par with a potentially New Orleans level bad. And New Orleans level bad is where no one wants to be right now. Nobody wants to be like the Pelicans.
None.
Gosh, they used to be such a good team, and they've completely collapsed. You don't want to become like what the Pelicans are, what Washington is, what the Nets are, what the Hornets are, what the Clippers are. I don't even understand how the Clippers are this bad. But I digress.
Players, but that's true.
Yep.
And obviously the Clippers have one of your former players in Brook Lopez. But, it's interesting. I just want to remark on this coach thing, and we're going to close out. Because if I remember, they fired Budenholzer. I'm pretty sure. I just want to make sure I'm writing this. Giannis helped pick Adrian Griffin.
Yes, he did. And then he's the one who got Griffin out the door, because I don't understand what was going on. But it was apparently Giannis approved the idea of firing him. He wasn't happy about it, but they fired him. And I'd never understood that, because when you look at the record that he had when he was coaching the team, right? Griffin was 30-13. They made it like Doc saved the season, right? Do you know what Doc Rivers' record was that year?
Well, you said they were 30-13. I think they ended with 49 wins. I could be wrong. So they were 19.
Keep in mind, Joe Prunty took over for 3 games, and then they went to Doc.
That's right. So I'd have to take 3 games out of the equation.
What would be the final record that they finished with that? What would Doc have possibly done to ruin that?
I'm going to say he barely touched double-digit wins. I'm going to say he won like 14, 15 games. And then the 13 as opposed to the 33, he probably lost like 8. Oh, wait, hold on a second. I might know. I think he was, 9-18?
Nah, you gave him a positive record. It was negative. He went 17-19. So keep in mind, Griffin was actually on a very good trend with the Milwaukee Bucks at the time. They were on a good trend, being 30-13. He was doing very well. The team was still vibing and doing okay. There were just games where they didn't look complete and they looked out of rhythm. And people immediately started chopping up as they don't like Adrian Griffin. Griffin's going to be out the door. It's going to be bad, whatever. And then he actually coached pretty good for that time. The team was at a pretty good record at that point. Again, what are we talking? The 21-22 season? No, that's not it.
23-24.
23-24. Milwaukee still finished with the third seed that year with Doc, but they were on a downturn, very rapid, very fast. They only finished 1 game behind the Knicks that year for the 2nd seed, and Cleveland was 1 behind them. And that was the year I think Milwaukee got bounced out by the Pacers.
Yep.
They got bounced out by the Pacers in the first round. So when you had Griffin, they were still playing very well, and they played better as a team. Without Griffin, that team was not playing well. They all of a sudden things got changed when Doc got there for the worse. And keep in mind, with that win percentage that Griffin had, the Bucks would have been better than the Knicks that year. And they would have finished second, and they would have matched up with the play-in team. And they would have been fine. They probably would have had a better path with Griffin. The Bucks got impatient. Giannis got impatient because it's only a few years out, and they started getting worried about the window thing. So they fired him prematurely. I don't think he deserved it. And now I don't even think he's touched an NBA court since. Griffin isn't even in the league anymore.
Yeah, it just shows you, in the case of the Bucks, that the grass is not always greener on the other side. And if I'm to understand, I mean, Nick Nurse was coaching the Sixers, and Quinn Snyder, I think, was coaching the Hawks. I don't know who was necessarily available. I'm pretty sure Atkinson was still an assistant with
Warriors.
Golden State. Yes, and they could have easily. I mean, I don't know if you could request an interview in season or anything like that. But didn't Giannis approve of Doc Rivers being head coach? I could be wrong on that, but also I want to
He
know
approved it, but he definitely doesn't approve it now. He approved it
definitely
because he was a veteran guy and they thought that he could turn the team around. He hasn't been able to do that. So
no.
take of that what you will. And by the way, you are right. The Cleveland team that finished with the fourth seed that year was Bickerstaff's last year.
Yes.
And then Atkinson took over the year after, and they went 64-18, and now this team is 15-14 this year.
Wow. But I think that some of the issues were with the whole Griffin thing is Griffin, number one, if I'm not mistaken, he ran a zone defense system, which the team struggled to adjust with, number one. Number two, I'm pretty sure Giannis had to, what was it? Giannis had to draw up a play?
Yeah. Giannis had to do it a couple times.
But I'm pretty sure sometimes players will want to draw plays. I could be wrong on that.
But I mean the point is you have a coach. It's a veteran coach. You would expect that coach to be better for your team, and it's not. It's just not the case. Doc is not helping the team. Doc is hurting the team.
Oh, 100%. I think anybody would know that who's seen the Doc Rivers experiment before. Look at LA, look at Philly.
Just like how right now Ty Lue is hurting the Clippers.
Yes.
He wasn't hurting them before. This year he is. And it's big time. He's probably out of LA after this year. He's out.
I would think so. Same thing with Jeff Van Gundy, because the whole Chris Paul thing. But regardless, mostly Nick centered. We talked a little NBA just regards to the Giannis situation, obviously. But Brian, do you have any final thoughts on this subject and obviously where they could find you?
Okay, so before I plug my socials one more time, I'm just going to throw ahead and just throw this out there. I'm going to make a little plea to the camera very quickly. Milwaukee, do the right thing. Literally do the right thing. The right thing is getting Giannis to a place that will actually appreciate him and give him a better chance to win another championship. Because we've seen it many times before. We both know this. Giannis doesn't want another MVP. He can never get an all-star again. He can never get DPOY again. As long as he gets another championship. That's what he plays for. In the NBA, you play for championships. You don't play for accolades. You don't play for these awards. You play for championships. Anybody who tells you otherwise doesn't know ball. You can see plenty of player podcasts that tell you that. They all tell you all the time. I would even trade my championship for a pay bump where I would be a multi-millionaire like these other guys who get the massive contracts. I don't care about the money when you can win a championship. And that's the Giannis mentality. It's always been that way. And unfortunately, Milwaukee you have not shared that same vision now. You've lost sight of the vision. You have fumbled a great opportunity that you've had 5 years with. You had another 5 years after that championship to make another run and to build it back and get it back there again. You've squandered that with high-risk trades that did not pay out for guys that were older, that were going to have injury questions coming up. You did it to yourself. And you owe Giannis the respect to send into a franchise that will maximize his talent and help to bring them a championship. That's what's more important right now. If New York is that team, then go New York, go New York, go. If it's San Antonio, send to San Antonio. Do what's right for the franchise, get a great return for him, but prioritize the fact that he cannot stay here much longer. Not because we don't want him here, but because we are wasting him here. I will forever be a Giannis fan, but I know when it's time for him to go. And I know when it's time for him to do what's best for him. As a Bucks fan and a Giannis fan, he needs to do what's best for him, and we need to focus on the future without him. As for my socials, you guys can find me on Instagram at BAMansell _, on TikTok at The Brian Mansell Show. Same thing for YouTube and Twitch, The Brian Mansell Show, and on X at BA Mansell.
Very well said, Brian. We all love Brian's play to the camera to the Bucks organization, especially on a Knicks show, podcast, whatever you want to say. But if you guys haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you want to go live or drop a new video. Also, check out Brian's links down in the comment section. This is I don't want to say a non-dated podcast or an episode, but essentially this can come out whenever. Obviously, I'll share it on socials. Brian will share it on socials as well when that time comes. But regardless, this, as I said earlier, as I said at the beginning of this recording, just because the Knicks won the NBA Cup, and listen, I'm happy for the players and all of that, doesn't mean we couldn't have this conversation. So, who better to bring on for this conversation than Sir Brian next to me, a Milwaukee Bucks fan and a close friend of mine? So we had to get his thoughts. You have his thoughts. Check him out on socials, do all the good stuff. We appreciate y'all. Have a good one. Talk to you guys later. Peace.